Today's a real treat, actually. I got my good homie Soba, who graduated from Icon Collective, was taught by the best. I think his teachers are the engineers for a bunch of really big K-pop groups and everything, like Hollywood type deal. And so, yeah, he is going to drop his whole process on us pretty much. The thing about vocal mixing tutorials on YouTube is they're only there to sell a VST, so it's not really like like they're only using that VST because they're getting paid to. Adding on real quick, in all the mixing videos out there, it's someone who basically just breaks down what they did on a song that's already mixed, and that's why they're so short. That's not really how I learn. I learn by watching and by doing stuff. So yeah, we're literally watching him mix an entire song, start to finish. So, and we're gonna see what he does and know why he does it. This video is absurdly long, and I'm not gonna tell you it's the most interesting either, but sometimes you gotta not have fun to have fun. You can watch this in parts, segments, whatever, but yeah, I can tell you there is a lot to learn. So let's go. All right, class is in session. What up, Soba?
What's good?
Glad to have you on the show.
Yeah, happy to be here. Happy to show everyone what I know, what I don't know. And yeah, so what we're gonna go through today is how to mix vocals. This, and more specifically, this is for mixing vocals for sort of like a Drain Gang type of beat, with like Drain type of vocals. But you can take basically any of like these fundamentals and put them into any sort of genre, whether it be rock, pop, EDM, hip hop, anything. Drain Gang. But yeah, I'm gonna show you like the fundamentals of what to do, what not to do, so you could have a good grasp of how vocals work, and possibly mix your own vocals, whether it be someone else, yourself, or whatever. So, should we get to it?
Yeah, let's get to it. You gonna start with the chorus?
Yeah, we're gonna start with the chorus since it's like the most important part of the song. And
already beautifully colored and labeled.
Yeah, so we're labeled chorus, verse, chorus, verse, chorus. That's how the song's gonna go. We're gonna focus on chorus first since it is the most like important part of the song, like the most impactful part. And so we have the instrumental, the main vocal 2, harmonies, and 2 ad-libs. And we're gonna focus. We're gonna start off with the main vocal first, but let me play through what the entire thing sounds like first. Just the chorus. 君が幸せでいるなら僕はそれだけでいい二人それぞれの道を別々に歩んでゆく
Yuki snapped on this beat. It's really good.
Absolutely. I love it. And just to preface, this entire thing is unmixed for now. So the instrumental, all the vocals have really nothing on them. We're gonna start off. So how I like to approach mixing vocals is first like listening to listening to the song first and seeing how the vocals should feel, how the vocals should like act as a part of the song. If you're just gonna mix vocals alone without ever having any context of the song, you might mix it well, but you might not mix it with the same sort of style, attitude, emotion, type of tone that you want to match the song. So listening to the song, just having a good grasp of what it is first. As a mixer, if you're a producer, you're probably mixing your vocals so you understand your beat already. But if you're not, if you're mixing for someone, listen to the beat, listen to the vocal, and see how it sits on top and how it could interact with the the beat, like the instrumentals, the bass, all that. So the vibe I kind of get from this vocal is more like dreamy, very relaxed, like almost a little washed out type of
Mm-hmm.
vibe here. It's not very like dry in your face type of thing. It's like very whispery, sensual type of thing. So that's a good thing to keep in mind when you go into mixing. So I'm gonna go through my process of how I would approach it, and the first of the process is having autotune. Let's see. I'll pull out autotune.
Wait,
Any autotune is
I
fine.
already tuned it.
You did, but I'm gonna just for the sake of this, some vocals are auto-tuned already. Some vocals aren't auto-tuned at all. But the purpose of having auto-tune is to not only just have the vocal in tune, but also putting auto-tune on vocals gives it like a very specific type of sound that like a lot of pop songs, a lot of hip hop songs have. And even if you sing on key or anything, like if you don't have autotune, it just sounds different. It doesn't sound how they would say like professional. It gives that sort of professional sound, whether or not it's like doing a lot of work or not. So I'm just going to put it on, slap it on.
I think it's like EB major.
Fast. E flat major. Thank you.
Is it chill to put 2 auto tunes on?
You can put as many as you want.
Damn.
So a T-Pain puts on like 4 or 5.
Really?
Makes to have that really T-Pain sound.
Oh, damn.
Mm-hmm.
What, and just like 4 of them all like with a 0 attack or whatever?
Something like that. I don't know the exact settings, but I think that's how he does it, from what I've heard. Because sometimes just using one doesn't give you that super robot-y type of voice, so you gotta use multiple.
That's cool.
So putting auto-tune here tunes the vocal. This one's already tuned, but I'm gonna give it. Sometimes doing 2 also gives even more of a nicer sound. It's give or take. Like try it yourself, see how you like it or not. And let me see.
君が幸せでいるなら
We're gonna keep it an alto tenor.
僕はそれだけでいい
Great. We're gonna listen to this and just hear what sounds wrong. What I'd like to do in the beginning is like listen for what sounds off, what sounds are sticking out, which sounds shouldn't be there. So fixing that first, and then adding like stuff like compression, saturation, whatever, reverb will make your like vocals a lot cleaner rather than compressing and then like taking out like the bad stuff.
Oh wait, I always do compression first. Is that like bad?
It depends on the vocal. If the vocal doesn't have anything necessarily bad, it's like perfectly fine. So the rule of thumb here is either compress first if you don't hear anything wrong with the vocal, and if you do hear some stuff wrong with the vocal, start with EQ.
Oh, so compressing
9 times out of 10 in a.
Because I just compress and then start EQing. But I don't really know.
You can
anything.
do that, but what compressing the vocal first does is it brings up the good parts of the vocal, but it also brings out the bad parts that you want to take out. And the thing with it bringing up the bad parts after compression is that it's harder to take out after the fact. And how it goes into the compressor like that wouldn't bring out the good parts of the vocal as much as you would like.
Damn.
If you were to EQ out like the bad frequencies that you don't want.
Oh, I've been blowing it.
That's what we're gonna start with first. Yeah. Okay. So first thing I always do, since Yuki probably recorded this at his home, is that when he's close to the mic or in an environment that isn't professionally treated or whatever, there's going to be resonances. There's going to be some like, I don't know how to explain it. The pa, how like if you were to blow in the mic, the low rumble that you're going to hear. And if we were to just solo this real quick,
君が幸せで
you could see through the EQ here that there's a lot of rumble in there, and you don't want that. You can't hear it, but once you compress it and everything, it starts to be more and more obvious. So we're gonna use a low cut, high pass, and just pull it back
君
up.
が幸せで
Yeah, I'm pretty sure like
いるなら
everyone watching this is a bedroom producer. We don't got studios.
Shout out bedroom producers. I'm one myself.
Yeah.
We all gotta start somewhere. So generally, I like to do it around 90, but you should really use your ears on like what sounds good. So
君が幸せで
go too far.
いるなら僕は
it sounds too thin.
それだけで
Go too far back, it's still there. So
二人
right in the middle, it'd be pretty good. All depends on the vocal. Female vocals are like a lot higher, so maybe you can cut even higher. Up to you. You don't want to cut like exactly where the
君が
like the main frequency is, because there's still energy within like the 100 hertz range. There's still energy in there that gives the vocal weight, and if you were to take that out, if you were to like fully brick wall cut it like this, you kind of rob some of the energy that would be necessary for the vocal. So keeping it pretty tame around here is a good start. Next thing I do is, well, listening for what is too much in this vocal. So listening through,
君が幸せでいるなら
I noticed that the vocals fundamental frequency, which is this range,
君が
sort of like the muffle of the voice, is a bit too much. And how that happens through recording is when you get really close into the microphone, that sort of fundamental frequency starts to get really more and more louder the closer you are to the microphone. And the further back you go from the microphone, the less you'll hear it. It's called the proximity effect. So it's a good account to keep account of when recording, so you don't have to deal with this type of thing when you mix it.
What's
Like
the best
recording
like
further back a little bit?
what's
Go ahead.
the best distance you'd say for recording?
Best distance I've heard is like 5 inches to 10 inches. Really depends on your type of singing. Depends on the type of song. Like if you're screaming, if you're yelling, definitely do not like go close to the microphone. It's like a good 8 inches away.
Mm-hmm.
If you're doing more like a Billie Eilish or like a very in your face type of vocal, very whispery, like then being closer to the mic, so maybe like 4 inches, 5 inches would be good. Not too close, or you're gonna have like a very huge spike right here that you're gonna have to just EQ out. So what we're gonna do now is cut the fundamental frequency a bit. So I'm not gonna use Pro Q2. What I like to use in these situations is the SSL EQ by Waves. It's called SSL G channel, and I love using this because it forces you to use your ears and not your eyes. And using your eyes is good in a lot of cases. In cases, there's times where you would like need your eyes, or it'd be a lot faster to use your eyes, but using your ears is probably the best way to do it in this sense.
I think I've seen like
So-
some YouTube dudes use this before. I've definitely seen it.
Yeah, whether it's on through the plugin or through the actual consoles. This is based off of the SSL console they use in those huge studios.
Oh, the
This is like a
fucking
channel strip version of them.
like the huge ones, like where the whole room is, like a studio. The whole
Yeah,
room's what
that
do those
huge
even
table
do?
with like knobs and stuff.
Are those necessary at all, or like?
For like, so like the history of behind them is for recording like a band and mixing instruments before computers ever existed. So all the like there are like there'd be a bunch of knobs and stuff, and each like row has a channel like being looking like this, and each instrument, each microphone will be recorded and thrown into that, go through the console and go through into tape, which is the only way that they could have like mixed things back then.
So the producers who
Go
are
through tape.
like sitting there flexing like in a studio, like they're not even using it pretty much. Like,
Nope, they're not using it.
well, yeah, no, like I've seen
Only a
videos
very
of,
few like producers like probably even know how to plug it in. Like maybe
yeah, dude,
like
'cause
Mike Dean, but I'm pretty sure he doesn't even use it.
yeah, you'll see like producers sitting down there, you know, and then like they'll just pull their laptop out and like place it on top of the mixer.
Yeah, they place it on top and pull out an aux cord. I'm like, yeah, that's not how you use a console. But it's like, it's the flex. Yeah, it's just the flex.
You learn something
I'm
new
not
every
mad
day.
at that.
Can you hear me?
Hello.
Can you hear me? Hello?
Okay, so we're gonna focus on the resonant frequencies. I call them nasal frequencies and or room resonances, because the nasal frequencies come from the way your sound of your voice is. So whether you say it's through whether you say a certain vowel, certain sort of word, and like sort of the nasal of your voice starts to ring out, makes it like more muddy-ish. And there's also room resonances, which also are resonances that build up from your voice bouncing around the room. And each room is very different. Each like vocal with every room is very different. You're gonna get different room resonances depending on whichever room you're in, and you just have to listen for it. So we're just gonna go with the nasal frequencies first, because that's the first thing I heard. So let's see.
The
first thing I heard was this. Especially that part.
Yeah.
Right there.
So if Yuki was in a different room recording this, would that exact frequency be there or no?
In terms of this, probably, because this is more from how his voice just is. If he recorded in a different room, maybe it would be less resonant. Maybe it wouldn't be there. From what I know, like there are just default nasal frequencies, which is just
Well,
what's up?
like, is curing a room even that important? I always thought like kids, like producers, like who get that stuff. Like I was just like, oh, you're just trying like super hard to be like legit. You know, I was always like, it sounds the same to me.
So,
But like, does having your room not cured create painful frequencies that you're gonna have to EQ out?
So what it does, not having a treated room is brings upon an environment that makes the recording process a little less clean. So the way your room, since treated room doesn't have much reverb, much echo, slapback from the walls and stuff, there's going to be less of that type of resonant buildup, and there's going to be less wavering within your voice, and there's also going to be less reverb. Especially if you sing loud, you're gonna hear like the room within the recording. And if you want it dry, you're not gonna get it dry no matter how hard you try. So it's a lot of have a good recording, so the mixing becomes a lot easier, or you don't even have to mix it at that point.
Well, what would you say is better, like a $50 mic in a cured room, or like a $200 mic in my room right now?
I'd have to go to your room first. But
Come over, bro.
I would say honestly, with that type of budget, honestly, a $200 mic in a room, in a normal bedroom,
Alright.
just because
That's me.
the difference between like very cheap microphones and like just standard start microphone is pretty big of a difference. So back to the resonant frequencies. So I heard it one around.
君が幸せでいるなら
And you can kind of hear how like when I pull the frequency up, it sounds more nasally.
君が幸せでいるなら
And if I pull it back down,
君が幸せで
yeah, around there.
僕はそれだけでいい
Sounds clearer.
二人それぞれ
And since this is what it would sound like if I turn it back off.
君が幸せでいるなら
It's a lot more obvious now, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so taking out that sort of nasal frequency opens up the for the good parts of the vocal to shine out more. So like more of the body, more of the energy of the vocal, less of the nasally, because there's not many instances where you would want that a lot. So, and a good rule of thumb is where you would want to scope through is around 400 to 1K. That's where the general area of that nasal frequency is. So what I would do is like first listen if you can hear like a ringing sound. You could also make it a lot easier for you by doing this and then hitting the headphone tab, so you just hear that certain frequency. Like it's a lot easier to hear that like ringing out.
Yeah.
And if you have that, if you were to have that, hear like the high frequencies, the low frequencies, it kind of like masks it off. So we're gonna turn this off. Next is another part of the nasal. There's two parts of the nasal frequencies that I usually take off, and that's around around 1K to 4 to 5K. So another one.
君が幸せでいるなら僕はそれだけでいい
Around
君
here.
が幸せでいるなら僕はそれだけでいい二人それぞれの道
Yeah, around there. I'm gonna cut it around -8 ish.
君が幸せでいる
This one's still kind of ringing in my ear, so I'm taking it down a little more.
君が幸
And when you cut these frequencies, you don't want to like cut them all the way there. The frequencies, they're not themselves are not bad. They add to the character of the voice. If you were to take them out, you would make the voice like thinner. You would put a hole in like the voice, the frequency of the voice, and it would, like you can't ever get like the frequency back once you cut it. So be very light with your cutting.
君が幸せ
Cut it until like you can not hear the ringing, not until you can't hear the frequency, is what I would say.
君が幸
So this one
せでいる
off.
なら僕はそれだけでいい
This one's more subtle, but that's why I cut it less. But it has like a sort of whistly tone to it.
君が
And if you've noticed, after I cut these two frequencies off,
君が幸せで
once I cut them, listen to like for like sort of higher whistle.
君が幸せでいるなら
And that's coming through right here.
君が幸せ
So the question is like, how come that wasn't there when like this was here?
君が
When there was no frequency cut, how come this was less noticeable? and way more noticeable after the cut. And that's something called frequency masking. And frequency masking is how multiple frequencies overlap each other, and the focus is less. There's less focus on one frequency since there are more frequencies that you're hearing. And what's happening here is that I'm taking out these resonances that stick out in the vocal, and since I've taken them down, another resonant frequency popped up. Now, would you want to cut every next resonant frequency? It depends. The thing with like cutting and notching like more than 2 or 3 resonant frequencies is that it starts to make your vocal really thin. And the thing is with cutting any frequency that you hear that sounds bad, what it's going to do is it's going to make other frequencies stick out that weren't there before. So in this case,
Wait, you serious?
yep, that's what happens.
What did you call that?
Frequency masking.
Frequency masking.
So when you
So,
go on.
dude, damn. All right. Cuz dude, I literally had like 10 EQs on this one sound before, and every time I like cut the sound, another noise would pop out, and I was like, what the hell? Like, this wasn't here before. Like, are you kidding me? And I literally had 10 EQs, and I was just cutting them all, and like I thought I was losing my mind.
Yeah,
Like,
I had the
I
same
literally
issue
thought I was losing my
too.
mind.
I had the same issue too back then, where I would like. This is a mistake that a lot of people make. So this is a thing that you shouldn't do. You shouldn't do this. Scope through, and just listen for the next nearest frequency that sounds bad to you, just alone. So here.
君が幸せでいるなら
Obviously, that's there.
僕はそれだけでいい
Yeah, no, I've seen producers do this as well. And it's like, dude, if you boost it that much, of course it's like gonna sound painful.
Right? So right there, that doesn't sound pleasant, but it doesn't sound pleasant because it's boosted like 12 dB. You have to listen in the context of the vocal. So if you listen to it here,
君が幸せでいるなら
you're not hearing it ring out. It's not like in your face. You don't even notice it. So you don't have to cut that. The thing is, if you were to cut this, I guarantee you this probably would sound more obvious.
君が幸せでいるなら
Yeah, you could probably. It sounds like it sticks out a lot more. So that's what's happening. You're bringing more focus into a frequency spike by bringing down other frequencies. And the way to combat this is just to not do too much of this, like 2 to 3 max at most. So, and it's under the, as they say, the rule, less is more, because you're cutting less frequencies. That means you're still allowing frequencies, more frequencies to go through, which makes the vocal appear louder, more full, as I would say, because
Frequency masking.
Yeah.
So why does that happen?
so frequency masking is actually derived from phase cancellation. If you were to hear two, it's like, I use this analogy. It's like looking at one tree and it's like in the middle of a field and it's only just one tree and it's so obviously there you can't not notice it. But if you were to stack like 50 trees around it, you can really distinctly tell which one is which from the other. Now, assuming like they're the same height, the moment you make one tree like half the height, the focus is on
the other
there.
trees look taller.
The other trees look taller, and
Damn.
in this sense, the frequencies sound louder under the same context. So,
Dude, oh my god.
so like it's like some trees point out more than others, and it's a little too much. So you cut them a little bit, not too much, so they fit well with the other trees, sort of type of thing. So
Damn.
back to this. This one, for this case, this is more like a room resonance, I think. So we're gonna cut this out a little bit.
君が幸せでいるなら
Because I kind of heard it before even cutting these in the first place. So we're gonna do a little bit.
君が
Little finessing.
幸せでいるなら僕はそれだけでいい
There's still a little bit like a ringing on the side right here. I could hear it, but like if I were to do like a wide cut, I'm taking too much away from that vocal, and it's gonna sound either just thinner. So that's the compromise we make, is like only take out the frequencies that sound too much, and the other ones that stick out, like just bear with it. I promise you it won't be that bad when you finish the whole mix of the vocal. So this is what it sounds like with all these on.
君が幸せでいるなら
And back off.
君
Whoops. There you go.
君が幸せでいるなら僕はそれだけでい
And you hear that constant ringing, especially around that 500 to 1K range. What you're really listening for is a constant ringing. If it rings out just like once, and you just cut that, the rest of the vocal, which doesn't have that problem, is going to sound weaker. So you just have to find the most constant ringy type of thing. And that just takes practice. Just do this like 100 times on your own vocals or someone else's, and you probably get it. Each vocal is different, by the way. There's like in Yuki's case, his nasal frequencies are like right here. But if it's you, it probably might be somewhere completely different. So you have to use your ear. You can't just use like this guideline and just put the same exact parameters in here and expect your vocals to sound better. It's not going to work like that. It's probably going to sound worse unless you sound exactly like Yuki. Then go ahead and take this.
Dude. That's why I don't understand why kids like kill each other over Ableton like effects racks. Like I've seen kids try to like sell them for like $80.
Yeah, I don't know.
Dude, like you what? I don't know.
All right, continuing.
Everything's
on.
different no matter what.
Yeah, for sure. Especially with vocals, because every vocal is like so unique to each other. Every voice is like extremely different, and with every second, every millisecond when you're speaking to the microphone and singing to the microphone, your voice changes in timbre, in like how nasally it gets, how much resonance it gets. It's like the most unique
Dynamic
instrument that we have, at least in my opinion. And you have to really treat this very delicately. If you treat it like with abuse, then you're gonna get an abused vocal that doesn't sound very good, doesn't like sing as well because you beat the shit out of it through EQ and compression. So the next thing, speaking of which, the next thing we're gonna go through is compression. Now, is the EQ fully EQ'd right? Is it the tone? Is the tone fitting perfectly? No, but bringing compressing the vocal, especially, there's a cool trick, is like compressing the vocal while there's like still a bit of like boominess or a low end to it, makes the compressor work in such a way that makes it sound nicer. I don't know how to explain it. It's like less how it comes out seems a lot smoother and less abrasive. So we're gonna do it through this way. I'm gonna go through how compression works through vocals, and how it affects the vocal through frequency and tone through dynamics. And the main two things that happen through compression is dynamics and tone. So we're gonna focus on dynamics first. Let me pull out the stock compressor. I'm gonna use a stock compressor just to show that you could use really any compressor. I know a lot of people like sell like a lot of fancy compressors that are like specific for vocals or stuff like that, and I'm like, they're great, but if you don't understand like what the compressor is even doing in the first place, you may not get the best out of that compressor. So I'm going to show you what to do with compression, and then I'm also demonstrate some other compressors, VSTs that you could use. So what compression does really is minimizes the dynamic range, and the dynamic range is the range between the loudest peak and the softest peak. So when Yuki goes really loud and sings really quiet, the really loud part is the peak, and the really quiet part is the quietest peak. And what compression does is like minimizes the space between those two and puts them closer together, so it sounds more, I guess, glued together, more thick. Because in when mixing a vocal to fit within the mix of a track, especially like this, you wouldn't want it to be really loud and then really soft, and then really loud, even louder, and then really soft again within just 5 seconds. It makes it really hard for it to fit in with the instrumental. There are times where you probably fit it in the loudest parts within the beat. It sounds great, and then when the soft part of the voice hits, you cannot hear it at all. So that's what compression is going to do. It makes things all audible. So it gives the illusion that it's louder. But what it's actually doing is making the softer peaks louder. So altogether, the average sound of the vocal is technically louder. So that's what I'm going to work with. So, and how to use this compressor. So we have ratio, attack, release, and some guidelines of how to understand what the compressor is doing and how it sounds like is to smash the shit out of the vocal to actually really hear what is going on here. So I'll pull the threshold all the way down, and like that. So there are going to be cases where you're going to pull the threshold all the way down. It's going to gain reduce all the way, but it sounds louder. There's probably makeup gain in your compressor that's like automatically raising the volume to attenuate for how much volume you've lost. So you don't really have to turn that off, but in this case, if you wonder why your vocals just sounds louder after you compress it, that's the reason why. So I'm gonna turn this up just so you can hear it a bit better. Alright, sweet. So I'm smashing it. The ratio is at 10. What ratio is how much the compressor is how much the vocal is going to be compressed when it goes through that threshold. Think of it as like a net, you're going through a door and you're the vocal sound. You're going through the door and the door has a net. The net, what the ratio is represents the elasticity and the like rigidity of the vocal. Of the net. So when you are at 1-to-1, that's like no net. Well, 2-to-1, there's a net, and then you can walk through it, but like it's like holding you back because it's there. 3, it's like harder to walk through it because it's pulling you back even more. 4, pulling you back even more. 5, 6, pulling you back even more. Less elastic, more rigid. And 10 is basically a cement wall. You're like anything. If you ever try to walk through it with like all your force, you're gonna like smash into it, and your face is gonna be flat. So in this case, as you can see through probably right here, everything that's going through this blue line, this door right here, is being smashed down. And we're just using the ratio at its highest just to understand what the compressor is doing. So I'm going to explain what attack and release is doing. So this is the second part of compression, which is tone. And a lot of people hammer in the thickness of the vocal, and that's through controlling dynamics. Now we're going to go through tone and how compressors have flavor in them and how to use these flavors for your vocal. So we're going to listen to the attack and how this works. And attack is like when does the compressor activate when it goes through that threshold. So if I'm gonna start through really quiet, really fast attack and listen to the volume of the vocal.
君が幸せでいるなら僕はそれだけでいい二人それぞれの道を
Back down.
Wait, what? I always thought a quick attack meant louder.
Not necessarily.
Dude.
So this is the where how you can where you can play with like the attack and how it sounds. You really have to listen to the very beginning of the sound. So let me loop this real quick. It's a good way to listen for is the transients, the sibilance of the vocal, which is the S's, the sh sounds, and how they pop out. So right here, it's like being smashed down a little bit. So now like a little bit's going through. And the further I push it, the more you hear it. So that's the attack tone that that you can get. And if you want a general rule of thumb of where to go, in this type of music, faster attack, a more hard-hitting compressor, it's usually better sound, better fit for this. So usually 5 to 10 milliseconds, or even 2 to 10 milliseconds, give or take, sweep around and find that sweet spot that you like. If it sounds better after, then just do it after. There's no rule for this.
Yeah.
Whatever sounds good to your ear, or like how it makes you feel. I usually do it by feeling, so let me see. Sit around there.
Mixing by feelings.
Mix through feeling, don't mix through your eyes, man. It's so deceiving.
Feels, bruh.
Okay, release.
Real
go ahead.
quick, what's threshold? That's also something.
Threshold is like
I know what it is, but I just don't know what it I know what it does.
threshold.
Like
is
everything I do, I know what it sounds like, but I have no idea what's going on.
word. Okay, so threshold is like a certain line. That's like the door I was talking about. Threshold would be that door, and that'd be your limit. That you would have to.
So is
walk
it
through.
everything above or below?
So
That's
everything
getting hit by the compressor, right?
Yeah, everything above this threshold, that's going through the door.
Oh.
Like right there, that's being smashed down through the compressor. Everything below this is not getting hit by the compressor at all.
Oh.
So
Damn.
you can see through
Learning.
visually, but again, just use your ears and you can kind of really hear how it sounds. Now, back to the release. Release has a sort of sound in volume, has a role in volume as well. So if you were to, let's do slow release, like 300. Listen to the volume.
Oh, damn.
Back up. Notice how when the release gets shorter, it becomes louder. Why is that? It's because the compressor, after it smashes down, the release is the time it takes to come back up. So the faster it comes up, the more you're going to hear from the vocal that comes back up. The slower the release, the longer the compressor is going to be stuck smashed down. So that's why it's louder / not as loud. Now, in terms of tone that you want, Usually there's a guideline between like 30 milliseconds to 100 or even above, depending on your genre. And this genre is like a very fast genre, even though he's singing like more slowly.
Mm-hmm.
So we may go even further than 100. So let's just listen through real quick.
君が幸せでいるなら
And it's also really helpful to hear it with the instrumental. So we're going to also raise the volume to match it.
君が幸せでいるなら僕はそれだけでいい
I like that. It's around 60 milliseconds. It feels like it sits right in the pocket. Now, after you've done that, the reason why we've smashed it to shit and have the ratio up to like cement wall is because we want to hear what the compressor is actually doing. If you were to have the threshold like not so high, ratio very low, you wouldn't really hear what the compressor is doing. So doing this exercise really hammers down how what your compressor is doing. Every compressor is different, so I would recommend doing this with every compressor to understand like the mechanics of what your compressor is doing to your vocal. So you could for sometimes different songs, different people, you could use different compressors.
They all do the same thing, right?
They technically all do the same thing, but it's like how they work is like slightly different. They all push sound down. They all like minimize dynamic range, but like the tone they give are different. The way the algorithm,
that's what the difference is.
Yeah, the algorithm that they use for attack and release sometimes has a different like curve to it and all that. So and some of them, just by putting them on, not even having anything on, nothing compressing, it gives it a certain tone to it. And that's like probably like analog modeled compressors, and that's very specific to what you want in your vocal. So back to this, we're gonna pull back the threshold since we got our attack and release tone down. So this is more like getting that dynamic range to where we want it to be. Okay, so we're gonna now find that sweet spot of the dynamic range that we want. Not too, you don't want it too smashed, depending, or maybe you do. But again, listen to like how it interacts with the mix. I'm gonna turn the output down so it doesn't blow your ears out.
君が幸せでいるなら僕はそれだけでいい二人それぞれの道を別々に君が
Around there. And I'm gonna make up the gain because it's a lot quieter now.
君が幸せでいるなら僕はそれだけでいい
And the way to tell the difference is turn it off and on to see if there's a level difference. Don't trick your ears by just making the output gain louder and just thinking the compressor is doing all the work. You're just literally making the volume louder. So
君が幸せでいるなら僕はそれだけでいい
there we go.
What does RMS mean, by the way?
Roots, it stands for roots mean squared, and to not make it complicated, it just means the average dynamic range of the sound. And the roots mean squared is the equation it goes through to find that average, essentially.
Just some math.
Some math.
kidding?
Yeah, there's a lot of math in music.
Oh, so you mean like how high the peaks are, like that?
Yeah,
the average of
the average
all
between the
high peaks.
highest and the lowest peak. Yeah, that's basically it. But in a
That
more
makes sense.
specific, more complicated way that's less more accurate.
So instead of compressing it at the peak, it compresses it at the root mean square.
Yeah, basically, it compresses it at the average. It reads the average of the vocal, and then it compresses it to like probably raise it.
Do you like using peak more than that?
I almost always use peak, to be honest. Usually compressors,
Okay.
they usually most of them come through with just peak. There are a few compressors, I think they're called opto compressors, that use RMS, and RMS usually are for like, it's more soft of a compression. It isn't like very abrasive. So if you want to have just a little bit of compression, not too much, but the peak is still a little abrasive, then I would go with RMS. So it's a little like more tame.
Yeah, there's a couple things. I think there's a Clear Master RMS and like Maximus for FL that I use like a good amount, but I have no idea what RMS meant.
Well, now you
But
do.
now I do.
Oh yeah, now we're gonna do ratio. So the ratio, again, the cement wall versus no wall, and then in between is like elastic web. So usually a good rule of thumb would be 4-1. That's like a good
4-1.
Yeah, 4-1, 420-1, up to you. Like play with it, like feel it out, and then see what sounds the best. Because it feels like it's running into a wall. Like, it is like it's like a it's like a limiter at this point. So we're gonna pull it back. Right, cool. I'll change the gain again to match the level. Nice. Always gain stage your stuff so you're not fooled by just things being louder and you think that they sound better. Always compare, turn it off and on to see if it's relatively with the same volume, especially for vocals, because you don't want to be fooled to thinking that your compressor is doing something when it probably isn't doing anything or doing too much. So off. Notice how it's quieter. And listen right here. So when you say Futani, and like
that used to be the loudest part.
Right here he goes, it gets like, it ramps up in volume right there. But if I had this back on, more tame, more leveled. So you're kind of like smoothing out the edges, smoothing out the spikes, sanding down the wood so it like fits better within the context of the mix.
Sanding it down.
Yep, sanding it down. So like that's how you would sand it out dynamically, because you would mix through dynamics and frequencies usually. So that's how you're gonna do it. I'm gonna also turn these off. We're gonna get to these later. Sweet. And I kind of forgot, but a thing I did notice before even going to the compressor was sibilance was a problem. The S's, the sh sounds were kind of in my ears a lot.
Yeah.
And if you were to have this on a low volume, you wouldn't really notice, but if you were to crank it up, the S's would really hurt your ears. You can turn it up if you want, but I'm going to tell you how to deal with sibilance. So there are 3 ways that you can approach this. 1, have better sibilance control when you record, like not have your S's when you sing sound like that. But in the case where you're mixing someone else's stuff, or you don't have the time, or you're just like don't want to record anymore, there's 2 other ways. The second best way is to use a utility, and that's a gain knob. So in Ableton here, we have this gain knob right here, and then what you would usually do, I'm gonna put this before the compressor. What you would do in this scenario is listen or just look for the S's, the sibilances, and then pinpoint them. So the sh right there, you're gonna automate with whichever DAW you want.
Oh, okay. Okay.
You're gonna make an
Yeah, guys,
automation.
he's saying just create an automation clip and literally just
In
turn down the
yeah, in
sibilance
FL
when you
would be
hear it.
creating an automation clip with whatever gain knob you have in FL. I would turn this down like 6 dB, and then to hear the difference versus with it off. Here, I'll make it more drastic so you can hear it a little bit better. So I'm gonna make it a little. So like there, so much smoother. Fits. It doesn't like stick out too much. Rather, when I have it off, it's like louder than the actual vocal at this point. So what you would do in this case, and this is not a fun thing to do, but you have to go through listen to it, and pull everyone down individually. You would do this before even mixing, because just prepping it. So prepping it, like cutting out all the noise. So like when it goes through the compressor, it doesn't seem way louder and more like annoying. So it's a lot easier to work with. Now, if you don't want to do that, or your sibilances don't sound that bad, what I would do is use a de-esser. And what a de-esser is a like an automatic sibilance control. So we're gonna use.
It basically just does what you just did for you, I swear.
It does, but it does it in a different sounding way. And there's a reason why I think the utility thing is a better option sound wise than the de-esser. And the reason why is because the de-esser is like, it's basically like a compressor, and how a compressor works isn't like a gain knob. It like changes the way it pushes down the sound, makes it sound more compressed, rather than when it's a utility, it just like lowers the volume and it sounds like more natural. So that's why when you use like, if you were to use a DS too much, it would sound really weird.
Oh yeah, dude. Yeah, turn the threshold all the way up and gives you like a lisp or whatever.
Yeah, like listen to this. Here we go. It's too awkward.
Yeah, no, it's super awkward.
You have like no tongue at this point.
Yeah, no, exactly.
So we're gonna just make this more tame. And the reason why I put this behind the compressor is because it sounds better that way. If you were to compress something to where you like it, but then there's sibilance, and you can use the DS after the compressor, it would sound more compressed. So that's why I like to put it before the compressor. So when it goes through the compressor, it sounds more natural. And you might have to, the compressor may bring the sibilance back up, but it's like much of a more desirable sound, at least in my ears, than through after the compressor. Now, you don't have to, I guess, listen to what I say. You can put it after, like at the very end of your chain. A lot of people do that, but I prefer to put it behind because it just sounds more desirable into my ears. So let me balance this. I'm also put this down. The range of the sibilance is usually around, like for males, 5K to 10K. Higher for females. So
females.
Shout out females. So how it gets the key now instead of back then where it didn't detect the key.
By the way, guys, there is a de-essing preset in Maximus. I don't know why Soba's on Ableton.
Or I should have said this in the beginning. It doesn't matter what DAW you're using. You can use these. What I'm teaching you, more importantly, are these fundamentals of how to mix, and you could use this with any DAW, even if you don't know the DAW. So
exactly, it's all the same.
I'm trying to be as transparent as possible. You don't have to use like this specific Ableton compressor. Usually, I don't even like this compressor, but it's easier to show you how like.
No, they all have the same knobs.
Yeah, any compressor will do. It will suffice. Now. That sounds a lot better than this. So I'm gonna demonstrate what it sounds like after.
君が幸せでいるなら
It's kind of subtle, but you can hear that it sounds more compressed than if it was before.
Yeah, it does.
君が幸せでいるなら
Reason being is because the S's are being processed together with the compressor rather than compressed after the compressor, which compresses it even more. So that's the reason why I do it. Within just a little bit of EQ and compression, a little bit of de-essing, we already like have a pretty good start here. So next thing we're gonna focus on is the tone carving through EQ. So for EQing, you got your tone through dynamics. You've like made a good block with your compressor. Now you fix the problems of your vocal, most of them. So now it's time to bring out the good parts of the vocal. So we're going to use another SSL channel here.
What's that?
And the reason why I use SSL channel is because you don't have to use your eyes for this. And the way the EQs work when you boost or cut something is very broad, very delicate. It's not too abrasive. So it's a little more transparent, very easier for the ears. So that's why I like to use it for that reason too. So how I'm going to explain EQ tone carving is there are about 3 main parts of the vocal frequency. I'm going to use a Pro Q just to show you visually what it is. There is the 100K range. Not 100K, the 100 hertz range, the 1K range, and the 10K range. And what each range is, this is your body. This is what makes your vocal have a good bass, have its fullness in the mix. So I demonstrate here. If I make it louder, that's that fundamental frequency, that boominess. If I pull it down, if I were to cut that thing out,
Yeah, just super weak.
then there goes your body. It's just like thin now. Like there's no good baseline for where your vocal is. So that's the body, and this is your sort of like your energy, your not clarity, but like your energy, where like a lot of the vocals higher frequencies ring out to make it where the vocal resonances are the good parts of the vocal resonances. So I'm gonna go from low to up actually. So if without this, it would just sound hollow. I know, let's slowly bring it up. So there's more information here so you can hear it. And if I put too much, it sounds like almost like boxy, almost nasally. So that's what that is. And with all these different bands, you're gonna have to find the sweet spot of where you want it to be. For this is your clarity. So I don't know if you've noticed, but when I cut these two frequencies, you could still understand what Yuki was saying. So if I do this again, even though you're not really hearing much here, you still understand his pronunciations, right? And the same goes for here. Or when I turn this down.
君が幸せでいるなら
It's still understandable, but the moment I cut cut the clarity part on the 10K,
君が幸せ
it
でい
becomes
るな
muffly and you can't really
ら
understand what
僕
he's really saying.
は
I can't
I
really
mean, I
understand,
don't understand.
what he's saying either way.
I don't know Japanese, so like, I don't know what he's saying. But if you know Japanese, you won't know what he's saying either. If you're speaking English, I wouldn't know what he's saying because he's literally talking.
Everyone's just
Shout out
like,
to
I
people that
still
know
don't know what
Japanese,
he's saying.
So, and if you were to boost this up,
君が幸せでいる
you kind of get the shimmer of the voice as well. Not only is it the pronunciations, but the shimmer, the air of the voice. It's kind of it's the in betweens of when he does his sibilances.
君が幸
So the sound, but the really high version of that. So that could be really good for like a lot of good tones. Now, the reason why I bring this up is because same thing with the frequency masking with like single frequencies. The same thing goes for this, where and there's these 3 blocks. If you take one out, the others are going to shine. So a very easy way to explain this is listen to the body and then listen to the sibilance actually.
君が幸せでいるなら
With the body, with the fundamental frequency all the way up, you kind of don't really notice that the sibilance is like much at all. It's like it's like not very noticeable. But the moment you start cutting,
君が幸せでいるなら
that's all there is in the vocal. Like, you know, it's really obvious. So from a micro, from how it works micro, from single frequencies that relate to one another, it works on a cluster of frequencies and how it works against one another. So that's a thing to take account of when you do cutting, when you do boosting. When you cut, you make not only do you get rid of things you don't want, you also make things that you do want shine out more, especially with broad strokes. In the case of doing very fine strokes, there might be, if you do too much of this, like I said, you're going to have things you don't never heard come out that sound pretty undesirable. So this is a good practice to understand how EQ tone is going to affect each other in this instance. So I'm not going to use the Pro Q2. I'm going to rather use my ears for the with the SSL channel here. Right.
And you're gonna boost some of the stuff with this.
So I'm gonna bring out the good parts of the vocal, and
Okay.
I'm gonna tame a bit of the parts I don't like about the vocal. Because as much as we cut a lot in before compression still brings everything up. You know, like
Yeah.
it doesn't make the bad things go away. So we're gonna
Yeah, dude, that's so annoying.
take it up a notch.
Why can't you just cut something
Yeah.
and it can be gone forever?
That's not how it works,
Yeah, dude,
man.
why is music so hard?
Hard on the technical level, creative level. You just gotta run with it. So a lot of people don't. A lot of like mixing engineers probably would say never put your EQ after compression, and I can see why. But for this instance, where you're just controlling the dynamics and then a little bit of tone shaping, you're going to have to carve a little bit more to get that exact sound you want. If you were to carve an EQ tone that you want and you put it through the compressor, chances are there might be parts of that vocal that might how do I explain this? If you were to get a EQ tone that you like and it sounds perfect to you and you run it through a compressor, it's going to change the tone to probably something you don't like. Maybe it makes it better. You could try throwing it behind or after the compressor. It doesn't matter. But if you want a precise tone that you like with how the compressor sounds, this is the way I would like to do it. So going into it, we're going to cut more of those fundamental frequencies, because still seems didn't cut it entirely, because I remember I liked how it sounded when going through the compressor. So we're going to listen through.
君が幸せでいるなら僕はそれだけでいい
Yeah, cut a little bit more, and you notice how like the sibilance popped up again and all that. So that's what you're gonna have to worry about, watch out for. So I'm gonna listen through again.
君が幸せでいるなら
Okay, then around here. So I'm going to boost, low Q, higher Q.
君が幸せでいるなら僕は
This one's really ringy. And notice how it sounded like a bit boxy here. Don't fall for this like kind of illusion that it's really boxy here. It's going to be boxy when you boost it 16 dB. That's just how it's going to be. But really have to listen for like really those ringy standout tones. And that was around like here.
君が幸せでいるなら
And even though this isn't like the range where it sounds muddy, it's where it's making the vocal itself like more muddy, less clear. So we're gonna shave off a little bit.
君が
Reset my ears.
幸せでいるなら僕はそれだけでいい
Okay.
二人
And I'm going to boost the energy of the vocal. I said around 1K. It can go from 1K up to 3K, 4K. That's where like your a presence is a better word. That's where your presence is. So
君が幸せでいるな
that's not
ら
what it is. So you could kind of hear where the presence would start kicking in, or like the energy just sounds like a lot more loud to you. And just a quick note, it's around 2.4K hertz is where you hear frequencies the loudest. When it goes lower or above, that's when it's not not as loud. So that's how you can take advantage of that tactic and boost around like 3K to have it louder, like perceived louder, instead of just like boost making the entire vocal louder, so that it's not entirely louder in volume but through frequency, if that makes any sense. So right around here.
君が幸せでいるなら僕は
Has more presence once I boost it, so I'm gonna pull it back down.
君が幸せでいるなら僕はそれだけでいい
Sounds good. And to play with the Q, I would like to play with it and move it back and forth to see wherever it like shines better.
君が幸せでいるなら僕はそれだけでいい
Word. So now that we have carved out the tone, there's also the clarity. Now you got to be careful with boosting clarity, especially if you have sibilance like this. Easily boosting the clarity means you're boosting the sibilance. So you have to be very generous, not generous, conservative with how much you're boosting it.
君が幸
So I like to kind of like boost the air a little bit.
君が幸
Just like
せ
2
でい
dB.
るなら僕はそれだけでいい二人
Right.
それぞれの道を
With the bypassed,
君が幸せでいる
this is a much more darker tone. And brighter tone. More presence without it being much louder at all in terms of decibels. And to play it within the context of the mix. Off. Sticks out a lot more. Has it's taking up less space. Kind of like that. So we're gonna keep it that way. Now, what's next? So like we boosted the highs a little bit. It does bring out the sibilance. So if it comes to this case, sometimes going back and pulling it down even more. So it's like a lot more pleasant to the ears and less abrasive. A lot of times when you're doing this type of stuff, there like many times, the first times you're gonna do an EQ cut in here may not be exactly how you want it to. So after you do the compression and all that, you might have to go back and tweak a little bit to get the sound you want. So far, it sounds fairly good. But because I boosted some frequencies, some of those whistling tones came back. So I'm going to pull out another EQ here. I could also go back here, but to not change everything that is going to go through the compressor and everything, I'm just going to do it through here. I'm hearing this a lot, this part. This is ringing a lot. Now I didn't cut the entire part in back then because there's still some valuable frequencies in there. I didn't want to like fully take out that whole 3K range because that's where the presence is. That's where a lot of the energy is. So now that I got it to a relative tone that I want, I can carve a little bit more. So I'm gonna make the Q a little bit wider here. Yeah. And because I didn't have enough bands to work with here, I'm gonna cheat and use a little bit more and boost more of the presence here. Just a little bit. So it sounds a lot smoother with it on. With off. Little that 3K is like smoothed out a lot more now that we added this. And you might notice that like low end comes back a little bit, and that goes through the compressor when it like brings it back up. You could choose to just low pass it again, just a little bit. Sweet. And now we have a much closer sound than we did before. Did I change something? No, I didn't. Okay. A much closer sound to the sound that we want than what we did. So to give perspective, here's it all off. And here's it back on. Sounds like it's not recorded in the bedroom now. So fits more into the mix. And now I'm going to go through something optional. So a lot of people go through one compressor, but you could do two compressors. And that's called serial compression, where you would do one specific thing for the compressor, whether you want a certain tone first, and then you would go to another compressor for another different tone, or even want to compress a little bit more. So there are times where you could just throw another compressor after the chain and do your thing, have it sound better. But there are times where it would sound too compressed, no matter what you do. So where do you find that like balance between too compressed and not enough compressed? So that's where parallel compression comes in. And we're gonna use the same compressor here. I'm gonna throw it here. And what parallel compression is basically, how do I explain this?
I don't even. I've seen it, dude. I have no idea. Parallel compression? What? So if compressing is squishing it from the top and the bottom, and would parallel be squishing it from the sides?
No. Parallel compression is how. I think it's much easier if I just show you how it works. So this is very Ableton specific, the way I'm gonna do it. But in FL, you'd basically run a send or a return chain. Return. Is it called a send or return in FL?
What, when you link one channel to the other channel?
When you link one, and you send the volume.
You just put it in a different channel.
Yeah, you put it in a different channel. You send that, and you have two of the same signals now.
Oh yeah, linking it to the controller. I don't know like what it's like actually called though. That's the button you click.
So yeah, in Ableton you could use these return chains. You'd throw it in full volume, and then you would have two of the same sounds playing at the same time. So it's like twice as loud. But I'm gonna use something called chains, which Ableton is great for. I'm gonna use two things. One is a dry signal. So I'm gonna solo this. And that's the dry signal, and this is the compressed signal. I'm gonna make this really drastic here, actually. So it's just smashed like as hard as possible. And what parallel compression is, so now both of these are playing at the same exact time. So you have two different signals. If I mute this, only the dry signal is going to be played. If I mute this, only the compressed signal is going to be played. And this is like how a dry wet knob works with a lot of these plugins. Is just altering the levels between it being compressed and it being not compressed. So this is basically a dry wet knob for when you don't have a dry wet knob on a compressor, which is a lot of the times.
Wait, so
it's by just what's up?
When you link them to the controller and you have them both playing in two channels, is that pretty much just making all your effects on only half of the sound?
What do you mean?
Because there's two channels playing right next to each other, and one has all the effects on, and the other one doesn't.
Oh, okay. So how that works is it sends. What happens is that first channel that has all the effects. Yeah, what happens with the first channel that has all the effects? The output of the entire chain is going into the next channel.
So you're just extending it.
Same exact sounds. Yeah, you're basically duplicating the sound, duplicating the volume.
Okay.
You're duplicating it's like duplicating a track.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Essentially, with the same exact sound.
Yeah.
But made easier. So that's what you're basically doing. And to have control, we're going to smash this so we have like the ultimate control here. So I'm going to demonstrate what it's going to do. I'm going to play it here. Whoops. Play both on. So this is with the I'm gonna label it with the compressed signal all the way off.
君が幸せでいるなら
So just the way it was. And now I'm going to slowly bring it up.
君が幸せでいるなら僕はそれだけでいい
You notice how it's getting more compressed the more I bring it up, while not varying that much in volume. And that's what this is really good for, is having a lot of control, very specific control over how you want your thing compressed, while not jeopardizing the peaks that you would like, jeopardizing the tone or the peaks that you like. So the reason why I'm doing this, because I felt like the chorus doesn't like hit enough, is not thick enough in the context of this. So to play it in context, I'm gonna put this around -18 or something. I'm gonna play it off and I'm gonna switch it on midway.
君が幸せでいるなら僕
On.
はそれだけでいい二人それぞれの道を別々
Off.
に歩んでゆく
So it's less compressed
for sure. It
with
sounds
it
better.
off, more compressed with it on. So this is how you could do this with anything, like when it comes to, I guess, reverb,
Parallel
compression, saturation, distortion, to have more control. Because sometimes doing saturation or distortion can be really destructive, and you can't have much control over it. So to put it in a return track, or a send track like this, you have a lot more control and versatility with what you can do. So
You click on the. It's like there's like an arrow, and you left click on it in the mixer track, right click on it, and say assign. Assign.
assign, right?
Fuck, dude, I forgot. I don't even know. You click. There's like a thingy, and you right click. Oh, route this to track. Yeah, and so you just
you
you're
route it
on
to
your
this
one,
track, and basically,
and then you look at it, and
Yeah.
you press the button and do route to this track only. That's how you do it. Yeah.
it like kind of like duplicates the
Mhm.
sound. So this is more the sound I want for this.
君が幸せでいるなら
Notice that I'm like compressing this a lot. I compressed like 10 dB within this compressor, and I'm compressing even more with this compressor. It doesn't always is this way when you're doing compression. It really depends on the type of music, the genre of the music, how the music feels, and how the vocal is, and all those contexts together. Like in the general sense, in hip hop music, in the drain gang type of music, the vocals are like very compressed, very like thick, very I guess one-dimensional almost in dynamics. So that's what we're going for here. In a rock track, you certainly would not be like compressing this much, unless it's like metal where you're screaming through a microphone with like all your might, and you want it to like cut through. That's different. EDM is probably more similar to this as well, where everything is super compressed. Again, just use your ears and find it through the context of the instrumental. Okay. So now this is about how I want it to sound.
君が幸せでいるなら僕は
Except for one thing, it kind of has a little bit more sibilance that I wanted to. So I'm just going to duplicate it after the compressor, because it can only do so much. Because it's also being compressed again, so I can have leeway through this way. I'm going to just DS it a little bit.
君が幸せでいるなら君が幸せでいるなら僕はそれだけでいい
Yeah, like 2 dB.
二人それぞれの道を
Yeah, perfect. You have to be really careful with sibilance. Like, it sounds it tends to sound better in low volume, but the once you like crank it up, like it starts to hurt your ears. And a lot of people, at least for me, I've tend to think that all the energy in the vocal was in that 10K range where the sibilance was, where the air was, but it's more within that 1K range. And you notice within a lot of pop music, within like hip hop music, they boost that 1K range, presence range a lot to get the vocal sticking out in the mix, not the 10K range. So be more careful with the high end of your vocal. All right, so now that I have it the way I want it to, and it fits pretty well with the beat that's playing right now, I'm going to. This is a thing that makes a lot of mixing vocals a lot easier too. Is I'm going to group these. Let me see. Yeah, I'm going to group this entire thing. I'm gonna copy it. I'm gonna paste it to the main vocal too, because it's basically part of the same lead, and it's gonna sound exactly the same. And for harmonies, I'm going to do the same, but for harmonies, I'm going to change the EQ a little bit, because you don't necessarily want the same. You don't want background vocals to have the same exact sound as your lead vocal. You don't want lead vocal type of sounds of tone when you are mixing background vocals. They're background vocals for a reason. So I'm gonna get to that later though. So I'm just gonna copy these through.
By the way, guys, if you on your FX chain, if you just right click on it, do if you like save it as or something, but then you click on it and you hold it down, and then you just drop it on the one you want to, and then it's duplicated. It's kind of trippy.
Word. Okay, now we've gone through the mixing technical type of stuff with vocals. Now it's like more like the fun, creative type of stuff that we can do, and that is through making like vocals wider, fitting it through, fitting in a space through reverb, making it like have certain reverb effects and all that. So I'm going to minimize all these so that you don't have to look at it. Word. So now we're going to work with, how would I want to do this? In context, I like it to, since it's a very atmospheric, very vibey sort of instrumental right here. It sounds like it's like floating through water, floating through space type of thing. So you would want that sort of like a feeling through the vocal as well, because this, as of right now, it's super dry. So you would want it to fit within the space, the setting that the beat has offered. So I'm gonna start with. There's no order to this, so I'm going to start with something called delay. I'm going to use something called Echo Boy, which I really love. It's by Sound Toys. Best delay I've heard. Use Echo Boy Jr. It's basically a delay. Yeah, it's basically a delay. So I assume you know what delay is. I'm not going to explain what a delay is. This video is already too long. So I'm going to set the time. I'm gonna set it to time in milliseconds. What? And create a slapback delay. And what a slapback delay does is actually.
So that's what it.
What is?
What
is that?
It's a slapback delay, dude. You're like
Okay.
Sorry, dude. I was trying to be helpful. Like, I guess not.
I thought you were just laughing. Okay, so what a slapback delay does, it kind of like Slappy just did.
Slaps you back, dude. That's what I'm saying.
It creates a one delay where with the feedback all the way down, it creates a delay where it gives the illusion that you're in a room. So to play it through.
君が幸せでいるなら僕は
And
Honestly, what's the difference between this and reverb?
reverb can go on for longer. Echoes and delays are more well, just delays. Reverbs are like really
diffused or
fast, like more diffused, more fast delays, like going in like really quickly. It creates like a pad sort of a very soft sort of a reverb sound through all those echoes. So generally, I like to use shorter room to create shorter rooms, very close rooms with delay, because it's a lot easier to mix, a lot more clear in the mix. And longer rooms, I like to use reverb because it kind of like fills in. How I like to explain it is, if you want to fill a jar, let's say the jar is your mix for your vocal. If you want to fill the mix, you would start with rocks, and that being your delay. The bigger like chunks, you would like fill it up and it fills a lot faster, and then you would fill the rest of the space in between with reverb, and that's your water.
Damn, bro, these analogies. You're killing it.
Yeah, so that's how I like to see it. So I generally like using delays more.
That makes a lot of sense, actually, though.
Word. Good to know. I would generally like to use delays more. You can just wash out your vocal and reverb like a lot of people do. Up to you. It's a stylistic choice. I like this because it works almost with everything that I have.
Mm-hmm.
And a thing with slapback delays also makes the vocal stand out a lot more too. So usually you wouldn't want to put like echoes and reverb straight on the channel because it can make it muddy and stuff like that. But if you're going to, in this case, we're going to make it very subtle. So
君が幸せでいるなら
let me change it to this.
君が幸せでいるなら僕はそれだけでいい二人それぞれの道を
About right there. And if you want to know more about how to do slapback delays through your own sort of delay, go look it up on YouTube. I'm not going to explain it. So we're going to put it right here.
君が幸せでいるなら
It's not really noticeable in the mix, but it like makes it fit the puzzle a lot more.
君が幸せでいるなら
I like these really subtle type of things because it makes the mix glue a lot better in the context. So now that fits a lot better within the mix, we're going to add some effects, like to change, to make the vocal wider, to fill in more space, because everyone likes wide vocals. So we're gonna use something that I like to use, called CLA vocals by Waves as well.
I don't think I've heard
Everything
this
that's not stock here is basically by Waves, except for Echo Boy. I love using this solely for the ease of use. So you're gonna have this. I'm basically gonna turn everything off but the pitch thing right here. And this is your widener. It's like, I don't remember. I'd say I got it on sale. Okay, cut the camera, but like I got a crack, so
Yeah, no, yeah.
but I love using this because it's like very easy of use, and like you can use compression through here, reverb, delay. But I'm specifically for the main vocal, I'm just gonna use widening. So I'm gonna keep it on stereo. And this is what it sounds like.
君
I'm gonna open this up.
君が幸せでいるなら僕はそれだけでいい
It gives a really good width to the vocal while also giving a pretty cool tone, texture that a lot of Drain Gang vocals kind of have here. It's like almost like slightly robotic too.
君が幸 せでるなら僕は
That sounds good to me. And what else can we do? If you don't have this, we can also use every DAW has a flanger, and flangers are known to mess up the phase, so it becomes, you can turn a mono signal into stereo. So you can get this, and it's 100% right now.
君が幸せでいる
Now that alone sounds a bit too much unless you like that type of sound. Since it's a dry wet knob here, you could pull it back.
Can't you just literally put it onto stereo? Like, you know? I swear, can't you like mono it from the channel rack? I don't know about an Ableton.
You can, but there's not. I mean, you could change the width of it, but the thing about flangers is it also messes with the tone a lot. So you would kind of want a good balance of it.
Yeah, no, because I have a stereo plugin that just literally just you know makes it wider, and when I do it in the channel rack, it sounds different for some reason. I don't know.
Because you use the widening thing,
you can just turn it right or left, you know, to make it mono.
Yeah.
Or wide, but like for some reason.
Oh, so what's happening there is it's not necessarily adding anything to make it wider. What it's doing is getting the left and right signals or the side signals and making those louder than your mid signal.
Oh,
that makes
that's
any
good
sense.
to know.
So it's just changing the volume of your sides and your mids, rather than you're probably your stereo, like in this case CLA vocals. It's adding like a chorus onto it, or it's like changing like the phase very specifically to do that. So if you ever wonder in FL like why you have this sound and you can't get it wide from turning that knob up, it's probably because there's no side information at all. And you can't do anything about it. You have to add like a chorus or something to make that effect work.
It's knowledge.
So in this case, I'm going to do the same parallel sort of thing. So I'm going to name this flanger and put this at 100%. So the dry wet knob is basically the volume. So I'm going to make this more tasty. I'm gonna keep it around there because we already have some width with CLA vocals. And another thing you could do if you don't have CLA vocals is use chorus. Chorus is really good to just make things wide on itself. It sounds like this. Like, it sounds very similar to CLA vocals, so you could use this very freely to however much you want to get that wide sound. You can either do it through dry wet or through parallel, up to you. I like to do it through parallel, so. Yeah, I like that.
Wait. What? Why do you do parallel compression again?
Or parallel processing in general, not just compression, is because you have more control. Like especially with the dry wet knob, it changes the volume. If you ever notice. So if I were to like for demonstration purposes, put this here. If you want it to be the same volume and just have the chorus on top of it, you can't do that. So it like lowers what this dry wet knob does is it lowers the dry signal and raises the wet signal, so you can't really have more control over that. So that's why I like to use parallel processing.
Do you do this like every project?
This, yeah,
like
just because it has more control. There's sometimes where like I don't care, I just throw it on and it sounds good. Like rule of thumb, a life lesson: if it sounds good, it sounds good. Like who cares?
Always.
Just make sure it does sound good and not your ears fooling you. So we're gonna just keep it through here. And that's way different from just the single vocal here. Way more width here. All right, so that's as far as the sort of sound that we'd like to go. And now we're gonna go through reverbs. So I have some of these already here. I have a few reverbs here and a few delays. I'm actually start off with the delays. So this one that I put on the actual track was just to give it a space, while these on the returns are adding an effect that won't like affect the original signal. So this is very similar to like the parallel processing thing. I'm just using it in a different stylistic way here. So we're going to listen to what this does. So I have a echo boy here. And this one is doing two different echoes. One, it's a dotted eighth on the left side and the eighth note on the right side. If I were to just play that one, it would sound like this.
君が幸せでいるなら僕はそれだけでいい
If I had it off,
君が幸せでいるなら僕は
it's kind of like almost a reverb, but I think it's more versatile and it has a cool like effect sort of sound to it. And I'm gonna add another delay here, and this is just with the stock delay, and this is a quarter note delay. Yeah, a quarter note delay that plays every quarter note once the signal goes through.
君が幸せでいるなら僕
With the feedback going fairly normal. Now the thing with mixing delays and stuff, you kind of would want to EQ them out. They're still sounds, you know, like they're not things that you don't have to mix for. So if you were to mix delays, I would do this. I would cut out the fundamental frequency here.
君が幸
Because if you have this, and it would start to conflict with your main vocal, and it would sound all phasey and stuff, and like your vocal is going to be further back in the mix. So cutting that, creating more space for your vocal, creating more space so you can use more of the delay without it getting too in your face.
幸せでいるなら
And I cut this just for like tone purposes. Sometimes it gets a little too much.
君が
Another thing you can do with either delays or reverbs is doing putting effects on the reverb itself. So you could put, this is a flat phaser. I put this phaser here to add like a sort of cool sound to the delay. So it doesn't sound like a normal delay.
What?
It sounds more, you hear like it's scooping through.
Can you do this in FL?
Yeah.
Really?
So you would do the same like send thing, send to this track, put the reverb on 100% or delay 100%, and then add a phaser right after.
Huh.
And then you play with the volume knob to get the way you want it to, and then yeah, you just do whatever you want in that sense.
Yeah, dude, fuck. This is where I usually like stay away from reverb and delay as much as I can.
It gets kind of scary. Like I had a lot of trouble with reverbs and delays for a while.
So it's like reverb's like the one like biggest thing that screws up everyone's mix.
Sometimes it could wash out your mix. Like it could be like overflowing with reverb. It could be not enough reverb and sounding too dry. Just find like that fine like line in the middle. Cutting a lot of like frequencies within your delays and reverbs really opens up space within your mix when you're like feeling like it's overbearing at this point. So that's what I do. And I was mistaken. This is a ping pong delay, so it's going left and right every quarter note. But so this is a very subtle effect. This is only noticeable if you solo it, but if you have it, you can kind of hear that little bit scooping if you really listen. If I turn it off, it just sounds like a normal delay again.
Yeah.
Back on. Gives it it's like a very almost like a futuristic psychedelic sort of like a sound to it that I really like. So I got that. And that's about what I use for the delays. Now to reverbs. So I explained delays and reverbs, like delays being the rocks and the reverbs being the water, or even sand, however like you'd like to explain it. I'm gonna enable this. So I just filled in the gaps with the reverb. I fill in the gaps with the reverb so it sounds more. Oh, hold on. There we go. It's only at like adding a little bit, not too much. Adding it in. And what it is a Valhalla room. Valhalla room makes really good reverbs. I use it for almost everything. Really cheap. I recommend it. This and the vintage verb as well. Very good sounding reverbs off the bat. But what I did here is instead of putting the phaser after the reverb, I put it before the reverb. So it gives another sort of different effect to it. Instead of making it too phasey, it's just very subtle. It kind of gives like a reverb the like a character.
Yeah.
And I cut it a little bit to make some space for everything else. Be mindful that your reverbs and your delays make room, like cutting them makes room for every other sound. So it's not just the vocals, it's also like the synths, the drums in the mix. So you got to be like very cautious about that. So that's what we have here. Now it has like, it's sounding more floaty, more dreamy, that type of stuff. Okay, so I'm also going to go through something called reverb throws. It's you kind of hear it a lot in like hip hop or even pop, where they would say a certain word or something, and then it would like, that certain word would be like have a lot more reverb or delay, and it would just ring out for a while. So I'm gonna demonstrate how you can do that with a reverb here. I like to use
Reverb throw?
Yeah, it's called reverb throw.
I'm learning so many terms. Damn.
So you could do this on either on the channel or on through sends parallel, up to you. I'm gonna just do it on the channel.
I'd probably just do the automation clip.
Yeah, so you're gonna do it with the automation clip. I'm gonna keep it at 0, and I'm just right when it hits right here. Right. So I'm gonna automate it up here. So it gives like a cool washed effect. I'm also low cut it. This is why I rather prefer to do it on like sends, because you can cut like the low frequencies there a little bit too much. Gives it a lot more character, attitude, feeling to the overall sound. Like mixing is not just technical stuff. It's also like very it has a lot of musicality into it as well, depending on how you approach it. So you can even do it like specifically. You could overdo it if you want to. You could underdo it, do it as much as you like. So like right here, that's not enough. Whoops. Like maybe like
Dude,
right
what
here.
is this? It trips me out. Like, this looks so weird. I don't understand.
This is basically an automation clip on the track.
Yeah,
so.
no, but why is it on the track? And I still don't understand why there's 2 freaking pictures of the one vocal.
It's stereo, that's why. So it's left and right. The more you know. So I'm gonna just do it here, not waste too much time. So you could do this however much you want. Cool. Now, for a more cool trick, there are times where you may have a vocal, like especially female vocals, their voices may be too thin, too high, and you want more power through their vocals, but compression, whatever you do, doesn't give them that sort of body that you would want. So this is a very good trick that I learned, is using Ultra Boy. It's all by Sound Toys as well.
I have that one. I haven't even used it.
It's very good pitch shifting type of thing. And what it does is shifts your vocals into different pitches.
Isn't it like girls are like 80-20 head voice to body voice or something? And dudes are
80-20.
Dudes are like 50 or I don't know. I don't even know what I'm saying.
It depends on the female vocalist.
With like head, there's like head and chest voice, right?
Yeah.
You know, and the head voice is like the
yeah.
The chest voice is like the yeah.
It varies from person. Some girls have voices as deep as guys, or the same in terms of singing. They sing the same range. It's just that the timbre of their voice sounds very feminine. But in this case,
what's timbre
what's
mean?
Up? Timbre is like the tone of voice you speak in. I know I use tone a lot, but this is like the style of your voice, I guess. What makes your voice unique. So this is like my normal timbre, and this is a different timbre that I would like to use. Although I'm saying the same pitch, it's a different timbre. It's like the way the air pushes through. It's like how a piano sounds different from a guitar when it plays the same note. That's like timbre.
Oh, since they're all hitting the same note, but they're different.
It's not the note that's different. It's like the way they sound that's different. That's
These
what timbre
analogies, bro. You're killing it.
So this is an example that we could use. So I'm gonna do another parallel, and this time I'm gonna pull the pitch down so it sounds very low and create a parallel. So on its own, it would sound like this. It sounds pretty bad on its own, but we're just gonna blend it in slightly with the main vocal, and we're gonna make this not stereo because
so this is gonna give it more like thickness,
body, more body, because Yuki kind of has a very high timbre voice, although he's kind of singing low. So we're gonna automate this at some points to make it more full. So like that. Okay. I'm actually going to do this real quick. Yep. Gives it more of that body that would be missing if he didn't have a very thick voice. Very subtle. It's only used for subtle. I'm using it very subtly in this instance because I want these two, the Futani and whatever he says in the end, to ring out. Yuku. Yeah, that one. I want that to be more impactful because that seems, I don't know what he's saying, but it sounds like it's an important thing to say. So I'm gonna do that. I'm only activate it here.
I know what
Especially at the
he
Ayunde
I want to know what
Yuku,
he's
it's like-
saying now. I'm gonna have to ask him.
Go ask him. Translate for us. So right here, this is like very important where I would want there's like to be like almost a more of a body to it. Okay. And you could do the same thing the other way too. You could I'm gonna duplicate this and I'm going to make it an octave up. So it's gonna do 1 octave up. So you guys that feminine in it. And very subtle, but it gives it that little bit of edge that I want. Now I'm going to, since the main vocal 2 is basically the same thing as the main vocal 1, I'm just going to copy paste these effects as well. So I'm gonna do this. Throw the alter boy. No, actually, you don't need the alter boy here. Throw the CLA vocals. This. I'm gonna copy and paste less of the effects on some of these because I want that lead vocal to really stand out. And if I just throw the same thing on everything, it will all sound the same. So you want some contrast. Contrast is what makes music kind of sound great. Harmonies. In this case, usually harmonies have like there are double harmonies. There are like one that goes left, one right. But in this case, there's only one harmony that we have to work with. And what we like to do, we can't make it like sit in the center because it's gonna be blocking the lead vocal, getting in its way. So there's 2 ways. You can either pull that CLA vocals onto the harmony.
The stereo.
Yeah, make it just more stereo. So I'm gonna just bring this up all the way. Like right there.
So with harmonies, you usually do 2 harmonies just for 1 harmony?
Yeah, because you would want the harmonies to not be in the main vocals way. You could pan it like left or right, but it's only going to be there in one side.
Oh, so even if you have 2 harmonies for 1 whatever, you always do them in the same direction?
No. If you had 1 harmony, you could pan it left or right, but it'd only be on that one side. If you had 2 harmonies, you could pan it both sides, so it'd be even.
Okay.
It'd
That
feel
makes
more
sense,
even
yeah.
to the ears. Yeah, so in this case, we don't have 2. So we're just going to work with this one.
別々に歩んでゆく
So I'm also going to enable this. Make it fit.
別々に歩んでゆく
So now it's more on the sides, less in the middle, and it creates some space between the main vocal and the harmonies. Another thing with background vocals, since they're called background vocals for a reason, so you wouldn't want them to sound the same exact way as the lead. So we can change the way the tone sounds here. So I would probably maybe just take down this boost right here and reverse it.
Oh, huh.
So it has a different tone to it.
別々に歩んで
And you kind of like how I see background vocals, it kind of is like the supporting part of the vocal that like holds the main vocal up. So how that physically sounds to my ears is when there's like more mids and more of the fundamental frequency mids. I'm gonna actually do it through here.
別々に
So this and this together would sound like.
別々に歩んでゆく
I'll bring back down this a little bit.
別々に歩んでゆく
So it's in the background. It's not like neck and neck with the main vocal. So that's how I do harmony vocals. Easy way to do it is get the EQ that you did your tone shaping on and flip it the opposite direction.
That's good to
It
know.
makes it a lot easier. It fits pretty well. Sometimes it doesn't work very well because it might make things muddy, but just play with it. As for yeah, so that's how it's gonna sound like. For ad-libs, same thing.
Just copy paste.
Copy paste. In this sense, let's see. I'm gonna enable these again. In this case,
君が幸せでいるなら僕はそれだけでいい
we can bring this up a bit, yeah.
君が幸せでいるなら僕は
And thing with ad-libs too, what you can do is thing called Haas effect.
The what effect?
It is a Haas effect. It's a stereo where you put the feedback at 0 and split the left and right signals into milliseconds. One is around just 1 millisecond. The other one is 20 to 30 milliseconds. And what that does, it splits the left and right channels. One plays later than the other. So it's not playing at the same time, so it sounds separate. And what that does, it kind of... it splits the frequency, the left and right channels to make it super wide. So this is what it sounds like.
幸せでいるなら
Haas effect.
With it off.
幸せでいるなら
Big Haas.
Big Haas. And it's really good for like if you don't have a double ad-lib or something.
Mm-hmm.
Or if you want the ad-lib to be wide, this is a pretty good thing. To...
僕は
I'm gonna turn it down actually. Yeah, that sounds good to me. Again, up to you. Throw CLA vocals in there if you want to. I'm just gonna keep it as it is to keep it more simple. So that's so far what we have for the chorus. I automated this part. I added more reverb here because it felt like the is like more it is like more very floaty, and if it's dry it doesn't sound like it would fit in the context of the mix. So I boosted the reverb at this one instance. So it'd be just like more fluffy, like that's how I like to explain it, just more fluffy. Sick. Now we're gonna go to the now we have the chorus pretty well mixed down, has a lot of character in it now, and now we're gonna go to the verse. So the verse is not the same as the chorus. It doesn't have the same amount of energy. Usually doesn't have the same amount of energy, doesn't have the same amount of vibe that you would want. So what I'm going to do is take away some of these things. I'm going to automate some of these things to turn off when the verse hits. So the first thing is, most obviously it's going to turn off the wideness of the vocal. So I'm going to turn off the CLA vocals that gives it that width, along with the flanger and chorus effect. So it's gonna give that huge difference. So here you go. It's like it's in a different setting, different space, and it gives it like it tells you sonically, not just through the way he sings, but like the way the mix is how it's now the verse, the different part of the song. It's not the chorus anymore. And this sort of contrast makes the chorus just much more powerful, much more impactful. Because if you were to ride this whole like line with all these on, the chorus wouldn't hit as hard as you'd want it to be, vocal wise. So I turn these off along with this too. Yeah, so let's play through.
しさたちを君の物語に僕を刻んでくれよ一つ一つ
And when it comes back in,
また出会う時まで君が幸せ
Dude, this song's fire.
yeah, it's just like it hits more like and a very easy way to like also make it like make the chorus more impactful is to also automate volume and
Or just like turn it up a little bit more.
Here. Yeah, like just turn it up 1 dB, or even in the verse, turn it down 1 dB. But that sounds pretty well done to me, so I'm just gonna keep it there. Just turn it out like maybe like 0.5 to like 1 dB. This is bigger, like it just the contrast between that and that just like makes you like you notice it, that type of thing. So you could do that if you don't have like that. If you're not gonna do the wide thing with CLA vocals, you can do volume automation. That makes a good difference in the mix. So there are things that you could do with utility, with gain control, and when mixing vocals. There's sometimes where your vocals, your harmonies, your background vocals may not be necessary in a certain part of the song. So through here, I'm going to demonstrate. So this is after the chorus. To me, it feels like that harmony doesn't need to be there. It goes from really like very I guess powerful into a very like light, sensual, soft sort of a vibe into the verse, and the harmony kind of makes it detracts from that sort of vibe. So I wouldn't take it away because it has a lot of value in it. Rather, what I did is I automated the volume of the harmony to go from down to up. So right here, because when it comes when he hits the high harmony, it feels like it's still part of the chorus, and but it's like
No, I know exactly what you
don't want that.
No, that's sick. And
in that situation.
Builds,
so like,
So
if you listen here, slowly, like very soft, it's like slowly creeping up. Anything louder until it's like straight in your face. So using like gain automation is a very powerful tool. Like to really using dynamics as a control of like emotion is a very powerful tool.
That's a really good idea.
Especially in this sense. Sometimes like not all harmonies, not all doubles, not all ad-libs may be necessary for like this sort of for whatever section you have. So you could, and you don't want to take it away too. Sometimes it might be good to just mute it. Yeah. You don't need it. But sometimes where it's like it's missing something when like I turn it off. So I'm just gonna lower the volume and make it come back in gradually, especially for this sort of situation where like it goes from high in energy to low in energy, and it goes slowly back up to high energy, and then hits the chorus again. And that's like literally what the utility curve is just representing right here.
No, that's
raise in energy.
I'm definitely gonna be doing that.
And you could do that with your main vocal too. There's sometimes you would want like he said, like you would say a certain word, or so your singer says a certain word, sings a certain phrase that like is just very powerful and or like is very iconic, very funny or whatever, you can automate the vocal like this. Just for example, if demo was very important to you and you want them to understand it, aside from like beat cuts, you could also do this. Automate it up a little bit. It's a very drastic way, but versus very subtle, but like on the words that actually are necessarily good to boost up. If you do that, it makes the vocal more alive than it usually is. Because if you compress it this much, it's gonna be like just writing a line, but you want that line to go up and down depending on the song. So vocal automation gain is like really key for this type of stuff too, for any genre, like even hip hop, pop, whatever. All right.
Dude, I'm not gonna be able to sleep tonight. It's just gonna be Kimi wa shiasen.
As for everything else, there's sometimes, this is a very slight tip. If you want sometimes where you have the same chorus and it sounds the same all the time, and sometimes where like it gets a little bit redundant, then automating like things to turn on at the last chorus may be like really cool. So like you want that last chorus to be like different. You want it to hit the hardest, and whatever you like. You can make it louder by automating the gain like a dB louder, make it more impactful. You could automate the I guess delay or reverb to make it stand out more, like this. Subtle. They may not even notice, but they will feel the difference. That type of stuff. So I got like, I think that part of the vocal, and then I got it here. I recorded it and I chopped it up into like little 16th notes, and I pitched it up.
Dude, I'll have to show you this dude,
So, in the
David
context-
Shoddy. He is insane with this stuff.
He does this. Yeah,
There's
like,
a lot of people, dude.
this makes very little difference, but oh, I didn't even turn it on. Very subtle, and it gives it more finessing, more flavor that you would like. Same thing here is a different one. If you're mixing vocals with the beat, chances are you may have just gotten a beat. If you're not a producer and you just have a beat stem and the vocals, a good way to mix it together, because sometimes it just like feels like it's just sitting on top and not fitting that well. You can go to your master, your mix bus, get a glue compressor, any compressor really, but the settings is basically attack at 30 milliseconds, a release as at like 30 milliseconds as well, and just like be really soft with it. So like 3 dB of compression, 3 to 2. It gives it a sort of a, I guess,
Like it makes it,
more glue. It just glues it together, essentially. Oh, one last thing, I forgot to do this, is you can also automate your compression with the from when it goes from chorus to verse and stuff like that, because I felt like the chorus needed more push in the compressor, but like the verses are like more soft, more like just more soft. So I just wanted take it off at that point. So it has more space to breathe. So I'm going to automate it off at this point.
The compressor.
And turn it back on. This is just the parallel compression. And you would notice that it would make a difference in sort of compression and volume. Less compressed, two more compressed gives them like a more like a contrast and energy as well. So I like doing that too. You can do a lot, but like the whole like concept of like using contrast within your arrangement with mixing is like very key to like having a very dynamic, interesting sort of mix, because that's what makes like mixing kind of interesting, is like when it's when there's contrast. If everything stays the same, it gets kind of stale, gets kind of boring. So yeah, that's kind of my take on mixing. Hope you learned something.
I learned so much, dude. Fuck.
Well, he's in Japan.
What, he'll just he'll
he's
just send
in
me.
Japan,
It's like
right?
it's like some weird time there right now. He can't really speak English.
Then how do you communicate with him?
We
just,
make it work. It's pretty fucking funny.
You try.
Yeah, no, I mean, if you guys got a common interest and you're like friends, like I don't know, but like Damn, well, it looks like we made it through the whole lesson. Thank you, Soba.
Yeah,
that was some straight knowledge.
Thank you for having me.
I'm so pumped, dude.
Yeah, I hope you guys have learned something. Hope you've gotten at least something out of this, whether it be through like technical or like creative mixing. And hope
Yeah, there's so much. Let's just play the whole song and hear how it sounds.
All right, let's go.
事なものは旅路の果てにあるから君が幸せでいるなら僕はそれだけでいい二人それぞれの道を別々に歩んでゆく
Oh, we did it, bro. Holy shit. Crazy.
Did it.
Let's go.
Woo!
Episode
Let's
1
go.
learn time, bro. We did done our learning.
I did my teaching.
Fuck, bro.